This is John Trek McPhee, the Sheriff of Baghdad. This is part 2 of the retention shooting series with Greg Thompson.
I would say this is people will argue with you on what you should do based off of legalities and the legal aspect of how this goes down, not the you need to fucking
and that's
survive
a big part of it. And
period.
that, for me, that goes with environment. You know what I mean? When I say environment will dictate what you do, you have to make an assessment. It's better. It's better be tried by 12 than carried by 6. So you have to make that decision, life or death. But that's your perception. So you have to articulate it that way. You can't. Some of the guys used to get really pumped up and, hey, why? I'd run scenarios and I'd always ask a guy, why did you kill this guy? I'm like, well. And it was a justifiable kill in the scenario, right? Where they go, well, I just felt like he needed to be shot. No. Pretend I'm Jag or I'm somebody, and your support element here are real liberal-hearted and don't understand, and this is their first assault, and they don't know how it really goes down. Why did you kill this guy? And then they draw a blank. They can't really even say it. And you watched it and knew it was a good shot. But if the cameras, and even for law enforcement, if the camera angle's not right, it can depict something that's not true. And then it can get spun into something. So I'll tell those guys, hey, I always have something, hey, he grabbed me. I wasn't controlling my weapon systems for the safety of my own and everybody around me. I engaged the threat.
I was in fear for my life.
Hey, with Joe Citizen, Joe deputy comes up and he says something, don't write a freaking thesis, because everything that comes out of your mouth can be manipulated in a different way.
Right.
And you engage that guy wasn't, if a good person shoots somebody, it's because they were in fear for their life or someone else's life. And so a lot of it is your mental thought of the situation weighs in on. So if I felt like I was in fear for my life, that was my perception. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then is it going to be, then are you going to be that can be the difference between, life or death for you if you do even go to court, or what are you going to be tried for,
Right. I agree.
Or if you're even going to be tried. But those things have to be, that's where we go back to the before, during, and after. People always do combatives for the during the fight, but how did you get there and what's going to go on afterwards?
Every time I ask, like, why are we here? Or like a guy's like, let me give you the scenario. Like, how did we get here? Like, no one ever has a good answer.
Anybody, because students do that to me. They go, well, what about this thing? And I'm like, all right, I can't answer you unless you put this in perspective, because the environment, everything will change based on this stuff. But they don't understand it. They may be thinking about fighting a guy in a bar, or a guy gets out of their car and starts cussing at them and should I use my gun or this stuff? It's like, I'm coming at it from another perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. And it may not always be right.
First question. Retention shooting, right? You draw from your holster, you shoot with the gun next to your belly, right? The guy uses the knife. Maybe he doesn't use the knife, right? Positioning. What is your positioning, right, to win this engagement? And what I mean by that is, right, I tell guys all the time, right? Jiu-jitsu says this all the time. Position before submission. I'm looking to finish this guy, but if I'm in the right place, a finish ain't happening. So what would you say for positioning for the average guy in the knife and then the retention shoot from, your belt line kind of deal?
Yeah, well, when it always goes back to an environment, you know what I mean? If you started with a knife, we'll say you started with a knife because you didn't have a through and through shot. Maybe you didn't want to draw attention to yourself, and his buddies are around the corner, so you're leading with the knife to give you a little more lead time with it. So there's some variables for that. For me personally, is this: if it was me and I knew I needed to take somebody out, it's the gun, for the fact that even when you shoot somebody at that particular range, like we just talked about, people don't die from one shot or one stab. You're going to have to manage him. And if I shoot him and he clinches, even though I'm stabbing him in the throat, he can latch on to me and may even foul my draw. If I can shoot him and he doesn't go down, I can go to an inside collar tie-up, snap him down, right? Knee on back with him down, manage him, and engage other threat. If I'd stab him and he starts moving and falls down, and I think he's done. He may not be done, and he's in a distance away from me where he may transition to a tool, and I couldn't manage him because he hasn't expired enough. And it's like bypassing that guy that you thought was done, but he's not done, you see? So that's another variable that we work with. So for a lot of us at that range, you're using the knife because I can't get the handgun out. You're cracking the pretzel of the hip with a downward angle to be accountable for your rounds, because every little tilt that you do is going to be penetration that may hit some innocent person or ricochet or splash. When you manage them at that range, you need to control that person on the ground, or he will present himself or move into somebody else's sector of fire, get to another tool, come back to roll over somewhere, run into another room, and come out with a tool, right? Yeah. So you may have stabbed him in the throat. You may have shot him and it didn't really totally mess him up, and he falls down, staggers over somewhere, you're moving on somewhere else, and now you're getting shot in the back of the head. It can pan out that way. For me, I'm not saying one way is wrong or not. I would say understand that when you shoot somebody that you're going to manage that they're going to make noises. There's going to be blood. It's not going to be, they're not a vampire, and it's not a wood stake you just shot into him. He's not going to turn into a puff of smoke. Know that you're going to have to manage that. And you may even have to even render aid on somebody after the fact that he's not a threat. But until you feel safe and he has other people, you have to manage that person and his hands. It's just like, even when I do all my combative stuff, what's funny is I'll teach lots of chokes, a lot of knockouts, a lot of things. And even however I grab a guy, I want to make sure that you can kill somebody from across the room. So you don't engage in the clinch with anybody or settle in a position in the clinch that you can't get to your force multiplier, or preferably shoot somebody while you're holding that guy, right? So however you grab him, you have to be able to do that in a second. Also, when you get compliance, if you haven't searched the guy, you know what I mean? Even if you choke him out and he goes unconscious, I got about 4 seconds to do a quick Terry frisk, and I may not get everything. I choke him out or knock him out. I check the immediate area of the hands while maintaining a visual frisk or search of the environment for other stuff and other threats that might be coming, while you're immediately checking the area of the hands, because you may knock a guy out or choke a guy out and freaking think it's all good, and then he comes right back to in 4 seconds with a blade or a gun and starts shooting and stabbing you. Right. So there is no finish. You get there, you immediately check the area of the hands, and then you're going to have to hold the guy there and figure out where you're going to be on the use of force, because you just shot a guy or stabbed a guy, and he's not dead, and he's flopping around, moving. He's trying to get somewhere else, screaming. His buddy's coming up now because you just shot him. Help my buddy, you shot him. I don't know what's in your hands. Get back, what's in your hands? And this guy, you didn't even search that guy. And then you're going to catch these guys in this sensory overload of process. And who's this guy coming up trying to win? Is he rendering aid to this guy, or is he going to shoot me? You see? And then you're at this dilemma, what do you do? That's that OODA loop right there of what the answer is. And I can't tell you what the answer is. Your personal assessment of the environment is going to be key right there after the fact that you just shot this guy. And his family and his wife comes running out, and she could be a freaking stone killer. And she just getting close enough to you and making you think about rendering aid to shoot you in the back of the head. Or his buddies may come up in another vehicle and didn't realize, and they come running up and going, hey, you shot him. What are you doing? Put the gun down. Why'd you shoot this guy? Oh, yeah, let me put my gun up and help this guy. And then now they tackle you and take your gun and kill you and your family or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, there's 1,000 ways to look at it, but my mind always shoots into about 50 different variables at one time, and I can't stop it sometimes.
Okay, so next question is the range. And then look, here's what I tell guys. If you're going to draw, whether it's hip or appendix, and you're just kind of getting the gun next to the body to take that shot, you need to control that person, right? Because if they get away, why didn't you just draw and shoot? Why did we even get here, right? But, if you're going to do this retention next to the body, this is only good for maybe 3 feet, because past 3 feet, like, who the fuck knows where that round goes? You know what I mean?
Right. So, and where the OODA loop falls into that, and when this is where we end up having to spend a lot more time on drawing the weapon in a combative situation, because the problem of it is for safety. When you go from a rubber gun to the range. For safety, everybody will grab the cloth. They may even lift up high at the pec to clear the cloth, to pull the gun out. They leave the hand there. But at that range, you cannot have your hand held on your chest because he will arm drag you. He can foul your draw. Even though you did one shot, you're pulling it. He now is closing on you, and you're going to have to go to post or frame range off of that movement. So that hand has to be there to manage that distance. Now it's up to you if you push away, snap down, clear, hold them. But at some point, if you don't manage him, then you need to start exfilling back to some concealment or cover right away, because the environment's not going to dictate you just leaving him there all the time. And there is no set answer. What you have to do is lay everything out and figure out, okay, so then what you have to do to work past that for safety is guys got to do simunitions at the range on some paper or some dummies and allow that projectile. But we end up using a lot, and it's because it's come a long way, and I can use it without going through the whole firearm, because the simunitions is you need certain people out at the range and around when you're doing the training with the sims. So we've done a lot of good stuff with airsoft, believe it or not, at that particular range. You know what I mean?
I have both. I do airsoft and I do sims.
Yeah,
I have both.
So we'll do some airsoft stuff there. We have the iPro, and we can let stuff rock right there. And then we'll do a lot of our muggings now too with the airsoft, because when I do some of the training off post at my gym, we have my MMA mat room's close to 4,000 square feet. We got a partial cage, and then in the back, we've got a matted room with corner center fed, right? And then it's a large wide hallway, and I have a padded window that can come out or cross space. I can black it out. I can have smoke in there. I can have sound. I can do white light or nods, and we got the cubes in there. But we'll set up and I have hidden compartments that'll pop out where they may even look behind the door and don't see it, and there's another compartment that'll come, and then they get blasted just to create that shit moment. But in there, when I do it, for safety reasons, I can't have simunitions in a city like that, so we use airsoft, and it's worked out great. I mean, for it, because we can see where it hit him, or and if it didn't hit him, from that, and so that's a great progression there. So people can work that, and you don't have the same recoil, and you have a lot less malfunctions too. I've had a lot less malfunctions with the airsoft than I have with the sims when we're fighting like that, because the sims, especially when it gets really hot, when it's a hot summer day and you're in freaking Fayetteville, North Carolina, or somewhere like that, and it's freaking just muggy, and then how well has that sim pistol been cleaned and stuff, and next thing you know, you did one iteration and you're sitting there you stop everything, and you've got 30 students waiting to run through scenarios. You've got it down to the freaking, all right, we only got, we got 30 seconds for the scenario. We've got 2 minutes to brief this guy and then get the next guy in, or we won't finish. And then all of a sudden you start getting all these, all right, that one malfunctioned, grab the other, now that one's a malfunction. You're like, I got to get these guys going. So then the airsoft,
I do that all the time,
became a little bit easier, but I like doing it because there's freaking things hurt though. You know what I mean? And so we'll run it sometimes, depending on where I'm at, and what unit I'm with, you know what I mean? And then the range in which that we're engaging threats. And are we shooting back and forth? Usually if we start shooting back and forth, you know what I mean? Then it's sims on sims. The micro combative fights where we might even do some hood stuff. Like I'll have a hood on a guy and then the hood pops up, and then now he has a knife and a handgun concealed. The hood comes up and he's having to deal with the situation in front of him, or he just gets blasted as soon as it comes up and he's just in a shit sandwich micro fight. But we've got freaking dozens of stuff, but that's just the way it pans out. But anyway.
All right. Last question, right?
Yes, sir.
Is look, range. And I tell guys, look, if a guy can grab you, maybe this isn't the best time to grab a gun. If a guy is closer than that to get to your gun, you're going to have to pull him in or push him away, right? So we got this pull-push going on. If a guy's an arm's length away, you could always, and I tell guys this all the time, is I always call it control lost. Whoa, 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 don't shoot, hands in front of my face. I'm backing up. I'm just gaining this draw, right? So with the distance, right, is again the retention shot where you're shooting next to your belly. This needs to be a fight. You need to keep this guy close, otherwise this isn't going to work, right? And then if it gets to arm's length away, I just kind of gain a little distance. However you got to do that, whether it's a leg kick, you throw a punch, you back them off, you get the distance to draw the gun, right? And what I would say with all of it when in asking about distance is, if a guy is, 1 foot from you, he can put arms on you. It's always pull him in. If a guy is arm's length distance, it's always get away, right? Because distance is your friend, right?
And what you're saying is right, but the environment may dictate. So
Agreed.
If I pull him close to me, if I can break contact, it depends. If does he have a support element with him? And what's this guy's? So if he's got cauliflower ear and he's freaking out, weighs me about 30 pounds, and you're like, I need to just probably roll the dice the other direction if I can't win head control, and I'm not committed to kill the guy. The problem of it is the hesitation of using the firearm based on you initiating the assault on someone. Does the environment and the aftermath dictate you engaging them? The other problem is when you induce that weapon at that close range, are you in a leverage position like you said earlier? Do I have head control and can I physically manage my weapon system? Because guys will clinch up and they don't understand clinch fighting enough that they lose the clinch. So if you don't have a basic like first grade of underhooks and overhooks and you just grab somebody, you could be falling in the wrong direction. And breaking contact is good, but even when you break contact, can you back up faster than they're coming towards you? So that's where both of them become a situational type thing. For us, what we end up doing is we tackle both of them. So even one of the first techniques that we teach in SOC-P is we'll teach what's called the double post. And the double post is we interview stance, hands above the elbow plane. I'm doing a visual frisk on, around, or near him. I assess that he has a weapon that's a threat, or someone else is encroaching, and he is going to be the factor that gets me killed by someone else. So when I break contact, both hands coming up, you change your levels upon impact. Either one or two hands. We teach two hands at first, but it can be a one-handed push. And with that, I can move forward or back. I can mug him over some furniture with one hand and make a transition and drive him down and start shooting him and other people. It could be a chin jab with two hands or one hand or push to the chest. But our footwork is this. When I teach it, instead of teaching backing up, we'll do basic boxing footwork off the double post. So I'll lead footsteps outside center line. As I explode into him, just before my lead foot touches the ground, I have it a slightly upward angle push with my hand. My lead hands can be resting underneath my other hand because I may just drive it together as opposed to two hands wide because his shoulders may not be squared up. Driving him back, trying to push the center of his body over what we call the tip of the triangle reference, heel to heel, push him back, pivot off the lead foot, break contact at an angle as if a box is backing up. And then if we go the other way, lead foot steps close to center line, which center line is defined by the line between he and I. Then step past the line, push him, pivot off to the other side. Now, what side do I go to, right or left side off the break? The environment will dictate. Do I have a support element? If I have a support element behind me, I don't want to move into somebody else's sector, fire off the breaking contact with somebody. We also use a double post. If he clinched me or I clinched him and then I want to push off, I may have once, arm drag to his back or swam to his back or duck under. I'm behind him. I'll stack him, double post him off, and then draw my weapon, pushing him to a threat or over furniture or dead space within the environment, right? So that will be a factor. If I push him off and step to a direction that stacks his threat. So if I push off and now I move towards his potential support element, I can get flanked. So I got to push him off and circle in a direction that's stacking other immediate threats. It could even be the vehicle that he came from because I'm not sure what's there. And then your concealment or cover will determine what side you branch off to off the post. So you have to process all this and the environment based on decisions that you make. So one, Am I grabbing somebody? I have no grappling background. I'm 105, a beast. I need to now initiate my tools faster, break contact, stack threat, based on the fact that I'm probably going to lose the clinch with this guy, and maybe, that too. So it's all a shit sandwich. You know what I mean? And these are all variables that have to process to make a tactical decision, but you have to keep all those movements real simple, but be aware of all of that, because once you commit down one of those roads, there's not a lot of redos. You know what I mean?
There ain't no redos ever. Right?
Yeah. So the clinch is good. Make sure that you win the leverage in the clinch. So the clinch is good as long as people understand it. Underhooks and overhooks, inside outside collar tie-ups, bicep, wrist control. Depending on what we're doing too, a lot of that stuff that if we initiate too, we may even just go bicep, pin their wrist down and foul in their draw, head control, drive them into an object, transition, and then shoot from a retention position there, because we actually fouled their draw. So instead of me fighting for their weapon, I just stuffed their draw and right away, and that works out better in the scenario than pushing off. So if I implemented my double post in, you've already initiated the draw. Now I'm breaking contact, trying to get mine out, and it's going to be we're going to be in a trade-off if I can't move to some kind of concealment or cover quicker off of that. So you may double post, and as you're drawing, you're moving to concealment and cover right away, and that has to be brought into it. So and it's a lot harder for you to get hit when you're moving than staying in that stationary position. If he's going to fire back at you, you're obviously not going to be as accurate. But when we did some of the scenarios with students with sim pistols, we did this one drill where we took these large 50-gallon drums and set them about 10 feet on either side, and then we created a box, and we had these guys like the Wild Wild West, and he had the same thing on his side, and they have sim pistols. And you say, when the buzzer goes down, you can stand there and freaking shoot each other, or you can move the cover, whatever you want to do. But when that buzzer goes, go for your weapon, and he's going to kill you or you're going to kill him. But you can't run towards him, so you're in a box. You're either going to trade and shoot or you're going to move. The guys that moved for cover got killed less often,
Yeah.
And what you'll see that even with cops, you're starting to realize, why is this street thug with no real shooting experience, because we arrested him, killing these cops on these shootouts? And the cop may have already had his hand on his weapon system ready to draw, and this guy spins, draws, and shoots in some crazy direction while he's running and kills the cop. Part of it's luck, but he's moving, and when the cop went to shoot him, the cop's stationary, didn't move from the position that he originally started in, so the guy doesn't even have to really look. He's just blazing that way, and he's moving. So now the officer has to draw and shoot a moving target as that guy's just lobbing rounds in that direction, and it ends up not working out as well. You know what I mean? As the cop needs to be going, hey, I see it. I'm moving to concealment cover. I'm moving to the B pillared or the C pillared, and I'm going to start their freaking blazing as I'm moving, But cops have to be accountable for their rounds too, They just can't start blazing in some direction and letting stuff go, because they're going to hit Joe Citizen. So these are all factors that change, but when they go to the range to shoot, they're in one spot for safety.
Well,
so then they start doing what they do the most of under stress.
I would say this is FBI.gov, gangsters or whoever shoots cops, has a 68% hit rate on police officers. And that's from the top of the head to pinky toe, according to the FBI. Now, this is my statistics. This is what I do. Okay. Now, a police officer in that same situation has a 10% chance of hitting from tip of the head to pinky toe, right? So why are these factors? One is normally the cop has got to give the whoever the drop, right?
They're reactive.
Yeah, they're reactive. A. And I think B is, another reason is police are ruined with institutional, horrible gun training, right? I think that's another factor. And I think the third factor is, a lot of times it's taught, take one step. Yo, look, if you're going to move, one step probably ain't enough. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to move, you fucking move, So And I think these three factors combined in these areas are why the percentages like they are. And I'd also say this is when the gangsters move, they move, or whoever, I'm saying gangsters, but whoever's shooting the cops, when they move, they're moving. Like they're either running and shooting back or like, you know, but either way, they're committed to the movement. Now, a police officer is at a serious disadvantage because they just can't throw rounds down range like the criminal or whoever's shooting them. Make sense?
Yeah.
So
and
I agree wholeheartedly with you.
Like you said, mindset is key too, because if a guy has enough balls to pull a gun and shoot a police officer, it's not his first rodeo of shooting at somebody, and his mindset, no matter how, you know, twisted it is, he's committed. He knows it's life
100%.
or death for him before he even commits to it. As you have this officer who's done 100 stops, 1,000 stops or more, there's never been an issue. So all of a sudden, when that gun comes out, there's that nanosecond of Twilight Zone, like this.
Yeah.
Is this done? And then where do I go? Where do I do that processor gets stuck in that little, and it's a nanosecond pause, but you'll see it in scenarios where it just took a little bit longer for them to make that real commitment to what they're doing. And a lot of it can be even political environment. Like, I got to make sure that is a gun that I see waving out of his hand
for real.
I commit. And then now he's another nanosecond slower on what he's doing. And now the guy, instead of only getting one shot off before you started shooting back, he's able to get 2 or 3 shots off because that's what it takes in a nanosecond by you pausing that one bit because of the political environment. And, you know, and that's where, like, a buddy of mine, they do this thing called the first 3 seconds for law enforcement. You know, Robbie Robinson and the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and they've evolved this, and there was another state trooper that really put it together, but they do it all over the country. And it's about interviewing people from a vehicle, and they call it like the first 3 seconds. And it's all the precursors, you know, your nonverbal communication that gives you the likelihood that something's going to happen. And even as simple as this, like what I liked about it too is they'll even come up and approach you and say something like this, like, "Hey, you don't have any weapons in the car, do you? You wouldn't hurt me, would you?" And what'll happen is they're looking for, and this goes back to lie detector little stuff, but it's not always there. But if I throw out in a nonchalant sentence, "You wouldn't hurt me, would you?" If you see the eyebrow almost smile or twinge in a happy way or a disgusting way, it'll be and it's not always there. You can't write a book on this. You can't take this to court.
Right.
But if you see that thought in their head of you being hurt, gave them a nanosecond of pleasure, and the eyes, the wrinkling of the eyes tell the story more than the smile or anything else. So you're looking at a micro gesture in an eyelid. And when those little things happen, it doesn't mean he's going to do anything. He may not like you, or he may just have that twinge out of nervousness, so you don't know. But when you see little things like that, and then you see gesturing or looking in one spot to where he may have something, or a not moving approach, his body movements are real awkward, where one hand's moving but the other hand doesn't seem to be moving. You know what I mean? All these things are little tells that say, "Hey, I need to be a little more reactive, and I'm thinking he may have something. I'm going to pursue this a little bit, not as relaxed." And then now he can react a nanosecond faster and put himself in a position where it's harder to get shot, you know? And even setting yourself up to majority of people, like you and I both are left-handed. So if he comes up on the driver's side, it's harder for us to get a good shot.
Right.
But for a right-handed person, it's easier for them to shoot or over the shoulder from the driver's side out the window. So if you approach from the passenger side and make them hand stuff to you from the passenger side, there's a big shoulder tail now. There's a big lifting in the movement there of the actual draw itself based on that way you made that guy position himself to draw. When we do our covert draw from walking away, we always, if I'm right-handed, I make sure that the right foot is stepping as the right elbow pokes forward to make the concealed draw to where they never see the deployment of the tool upon me walking away, and then the weapon system's out. And it gives you a nanosecond because the elbow and the shoulder is not visible on the actual draw based on your working hand, foot forward, will blade the body. The elbow's not a tail. And then you draw with your elbow pointed in the other direction. All these things are stuff we work on in the different courses, and I have, but and I shouldn't go in that much detail over this because I don't want everybody to know certain little tactics like that. But these are things that the officer has to know. These are things that the cop has to know because that guy trains. He plays with his buddy. He does stuff. And if you don't pick up on movements like that, the shoulder lift and all the tricks that are going to get you killed, you're gonna be a step behind the curveball. Nonverbal communication.
Right.
You know.
Well, how about printing? You know, reading printing, belt lines. You know, looking at T-shirt buttons. Like, yeah. Touching, bumping, right?
Grooming,
all that
posture. All of that stuff. If you can't see their hands, you have to assume something's in their hand, you know.
Right.
Reposition yourself. And how is he reposition yourself on a interview conference based on trying to hide something that's on his body is another tale. And, you know, all those things are things that need to be brought into for that interview for that officer, or even for you when you're de-escalating from somebody, is to position yourself in a way, can I square his hips up? So if I'm even talking to a guy, he's cussing me out, I'm bringing my hands up, but I'm going to try to square his shoulders up to me. Why? Because it's hard for him to punch straight down the middle with his shoulders squared up. And most of the time, if he's leaving in the, oh shit, I want to punch Greg in the face, that back leg will pivot and leave itself slightly bladed upon me moving in that couple inches that way. And knowing that when I was a kid is the reason why I even got carried to court for assault. A dude kept framing up on me like that. And I'd been boxing and striking and fighting. I'm like, man, this dude's going to hit me. I even backed away and he came up to me bladed. I said, man, you better get away from me. And so I gave him a little bit of the good news right there. And then I had to go to court for assault. But the guy ended up having a record and stuff. And he didn't even show up. But it became a big stink. But those are things that you learn from him. And I was a young kid then. I probably in areas hanging out where I shouldn't have been. But you learn from this stuff, and then you apply it to your guys, and you see it. And even when I bounced, I saw it all the time. You start watching drunk people move and set each other up. Everything's so amplified, especially when you got nothing to do but watch people. People watch, you know.
People love people watching. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, we'll cut it here. You know, we didn't even do an intro. We just kind of we just started talking. So I'm John Shrek McPhee, the Sheriff of Baghdad. I'm here with Greg Thompson. Greg, tell the guys where they can find you. And look, shameless plug. You shamelessly plugged my puncher, right?
Like that?
And that's what. Look,
it's a truth, puncher, though.
Yeah, the puncher is one of the things I always kind of wanted, because before I knew what a ring knife was, with the blade between my fingers, I could just punch. I don't need to do anything else but punch at the neck, A. And then B, since it's just a little knob in the hand, I could have grabbed the gun. And, you know, being one of the guys that always went out alone, I wanted it G10. So you wand me, right? You're not going to find anything.
And if you're not, this is the real deal. I mean, I trained guys in empty hand fighting for decades now. But I will, but I grew up always carrying a knife with me from the time I even had a little bitty knife in my, you know, and could even do anything. I had a knife on me. But if you're moving around and not in dangerous areas, if you don't have some kind of force multiplier on you, you're being negligent. You know what I mean?
Right.
Negligent for the people you have to protect. You got to have a force multiplier on you, and it's up to you if you're going to get to it or use it. But it needs to be somewhere in the equation. If not, then that's on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's a great tool there. But talking about with the SOC Peace program, if you're law enforcement or military, you know, I do courses for them. The SOCP, SOCP.info. I don't do any civilian training unless you go to my gym, and then it's going to be more MMA jiu-jitsu. All my black belts, though, they all have to know how to shoot and fight with knives, and we integrate that into. I use that with jiu-jitsu because once you get to a certain level, I'm going to make you know how to do these things. Even if you don't want to, I'm going to use that belt as a carrot. It's like you're not getting your next belt until you show me you can shoot and handle a weapon. You know, you don't need to be a killer, but if I'm training you to take a handgun away from somebody, you need to know.
You got to be proficient.
Yeah, for your safety and everybody around you, and have some basic understanding of room clearing and environment. Like nothing fancy, just your first grade, like, this is what you're going to do. Understand a little bit of white light as well. Nothing fancy, just some good common sense stuff on what to do there is important. But for my civilian guys, I make them usually later down the road if they don't do it on their own. But for law enforcement, military guys, we have a low-vis course that we've been doing forever. And then we have the SOC-P, and then we do some custom courses as well. And then I have professional role players where I've got a half a dozen guys that are all former pro fighters, all but a couple of them are prior SF. And we do professional role playing, which means they show up with key entities wherever they're at on a given day, and they will be role players, and they will fight you, shoot you, stab you, but nobody gets hurt. Like, we have 0 injury rates. Why? Because my guys will tell, even who wants you there to do it, say, no, we're not going to do that. Your guys will get hurt or will get hurt. Or this is the safety way that we're going to do it. But we challenge those guys. And what's nice about having, pro fighters and jiu-jitsu black belts being your role players is they will let you win without ego. They don't care. They have no ego. So they'll let the goofiest guy beat them up. But if that goofy guy falls wrong and their hand's going to get broke because of the way they move it, they'll readjust on the fly, and they know that guy's fixing to get hurt because they have decades of manipulating bodies and understanding what it takes to hurt people, so they know how not to let somebody get hurt. And then with the impact suits that I've designed on the TX website, like that txcombatives.com or txgear.info, is the impact suits. It has simunitions, face recognition on the front. So if whoever you're looking for, or if it's an old man or an old lady, there's a picture of them, so you have to move with the use of force. Also, the part of the mask can come off so you can breathe really well if you're not doing sims in the hot places. And there's hidden compartments for you to hide a training knife to ambush guys. And there's pockets in the back to hold your pistol so I can hold my hands up. And there's places on it, so if you snap a guy down that had his hands up and you're getting ready to clear the room, there's a weapon on him. Now you're going to have to acquire that weapon, take care of that guy, and now what are you doing with all the tools you took off these people when you're moving to the next room and physically pulled it off of somebody? These are things that a lot of suits don't have, and I was able to evolve this suit based on 20 years of role playing, and this is what I want and this is what I need. I didn't wake up and go, I want a suit, because it's so expensive to manage this stuff, but I had to have the equipment that I want. And then also the newer ones we have now that's coming out, it's going to have Molly on the front, so you can attach stuff with that. And then there's Velcro on the front, so I can add another layer of padding to protect the groin. So if you're the guy at the front door, because a lot of times when you kick in the front door and there's this person standing there, he usually gets the teep kick to the chest.
Yeah.
And half the time guys never get their feet up, and they kick in the freaking junk. So over years of getting busted in the nuts and kneed in the nuts, we have a pad that protects the area, not from major shots, but there's a cup that goes with it layered underneath that. And then the sleeves will come off too. So we may do clinch fighting and knee work with this suit as well. And then combat cubes. Combat cubes are giant Legos to create an environment that we want. We do our clinch fighting over it in the mat room. You got padded walls and cage fighting, evolved wall fighting. But if you don't have a cube to fight over, then you really don't know how to fight around furniture. And then tactical cuffing is needed. And then we have pads to go over our training rifles, because if you're doing combatives as a soldier, you have to fight with a rifle strapped to you. And if you have just a plastic rifle, you're probably not fighting hard enough, or all your equipment will be damaged and all your partners have holes in them and your teeth will be getting smashed in by that rifle flying up hitting your mouth. So we put pads over that. We've had this equipment for over a decade now. So anybody that really trains the way we do, all my students have this equipment. So it's out there, but check that out as well. But whatever, main thing is that you guys just train and have a good tactical understanding of what you're doing with equipment.
And look, I think you train a lot like I do. We train together for years, you know what I mean? Like, and a lot of times, like, I feel like, I'll see a guy, the guy will be like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, crap. You know what I mean? Or with the video diagnostics, what I do is I might go, well, this was crap, but these 5 things here were actually really good. And this one thing, where did you learn that? Right? So, but I look at that, but I see stuff on the internet and I'm like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like, that ain't going to work. And if I chime up, it's always like, well, you're a hater, right? But the truth is, you got to give everyone a basic skill at stuff, right? And you got to cover the 90%, and then the 1%, we train 1% of the time, or it's maybe not something to where you can be in a dojo, on a range, doing this every day. It doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is your training has to be principle-based, so at the time, you can make the best decision you make. Yeah. Right?
It has to link the tactics. And see, we're always, and we talked about a little bit in the last one, you have to identify the needs of the end user. Who are you training? Are you training grandma to come out of the grocery store, right? And she's got a little Derringer in her pocket or a revolver or something like that. Or am I training these assaulters to kick in this door? Or am I training this, UFC fighter that just wants to learn how to use a gun to be safe in certain environments? What's your skill set? And you have to understand that. And when people ask questions, I've learned to be more diplomatic, because I've had some really badass dudes that are no shit, like know their stuff and are super, super smart, bringing guys that are showing stuff that might get somebody killed. And I've made the mistake of going, of somebody in this, of one of his brothers going, hey, what do you think about that? I'm like, oh, that guy's real nice, but that shit's going to get somebody killed, and then just leaving it at that. And then they go back and go, that guy's going to get somebody killed. What do you do? Bring him in this building and freaking, and then that guy's, who said it? Well, Greg said it. And then it's like, oh, then I've got somebody mad at me. So, I end up being real diplomatic. So what I do is I always go, okay, PCP, praise, control, praise. Like, what's the good thing? Okay, well, that move might be good for this scenario, but check this out. If it goes in this scenario or based on time, these are the reasons why. Because the guy that brings it up really doesn't have it may not be put, he may have the knowledge to know what, but he's not thinking about these other scenarios. He's seen it, and he absorbed that information based on the environment that instructor shared it with him. So he taught it to him to solve this problem here. But what that person forgets is that problem there is only the 2%. And you're trying to take that and solve the 98% with that. And so instead of going, that freaking sucks, I go, well, this is where it fits for me. You know what I mean? And for when I sing with my guys. So you may want to be careful spending too much time on it. And I did, because I travel all over the place. This is the thing too, is I'll offend people in some of these classes that I don't even mean to offend. And I don't mean to, but this is the thing. They're in my class to learn. So I'm trying to say, hey, I'm just shaping him. It's just, he just doesn't know any better. But if I say something like that and the guy wants to debate with me about it, you know what I mean? I'm either, if he's a student of mine, I'll pull him aside and I'll say, okay, we'll debate it right now in front of everybody, or we'll debate it here. Depends on what it is and how much time I have. Because I love debating. Because if he can share something to me, and I think it, and I think it needs to move up from 2% to 50%, I'm grateful for that. Why? Because he made me better. My job is to search out answers and filter stuff. So let's have this debate. Because I'm not going to put bubbles. I'm not living in a bubble, and I'm not putting blinders on. The race is to the answer. So I like it. I like having these debates because I'm going to lay it all out, and we'll just accept it for what it is. And guess what? If it is good, my guys will be doing it. We're going to do it.
I'll change tomorrow.
I'll give credit. I'll give credit to whoever, with it. But the problem of it is, you've seen, when I go to learn and pick up new stuff and I research constantly to evolve, I have to go through 99% bullshit to get 1% now. Like, for me, if I even bring somebody in that's world class at something, he's usually helping me better at MMA or jiu-jitsu. But doing what I do now, it's really hard to bring anybody in, because I've done this for 20 years and bringing in the best in the world and got to work with them for free. And I know, you know what I mean? Like, hey, now not to say what everybody else is doing is wrong, is does that person have enough time to develop it to the skill level that guy's doing it? And that guy hasn't trained people every day from scratch in a short period of time to do something, and whatever you give them, that's all they're going to get. That's a different animal.
Well, I think, look, a lot of time with these guys too is I'll see guys doing something and I'll speak up, right? And the answer is always, well, you don't know, because we're putting in the work. Like, fools, I was doing this for real in 95.
That's because you're training the public. You're training the public. This is what I love the public, though, because some of it is you'll get some really good guys. They're like the best students you ever had. They're better than some of the people that you work on the professional level. But there's always that 5%er that shows up. And it's not about what you're teaching him. It's about what he wants to let you know that he knows.
Right.
And he's really not good at either one of them.
None of it.
I'm going to run my mouth in front of the whole class because I want to let you think that I know a lot. When really all you're doing is making yourself look like an ass because I know where you're going with this and you're wrong. And then I get pissed off because the other younger people don't know that how wrong he is. And that's where you get pissed off and go, that's bullshit. Shut up. Freaking do what you need to do. You're
I never do that.
I know.
I never do that. I'm always like,
you're like, look, and then you're like, okay, I'll have this debate with you. But next thing you know, the guy's not in receiving mode of right information. He's in receiving mode because he stepped in a direction that he knows he's wrong. And I've even done this, and I'm careful with this when I'm traveling, training operators and high-speed guys, not to make them look bad in front of everybody because we'll enter a debate, and I don't have their real-world experience on some things, but I'm really good at regurgitating what a lot of other badasses said. And I'll say, okay, well, let's talk about it. Well, what about this? And the next thing you know, he's doing it in front of everybody, and you made him look like, yep, he's wrong. And I thought this guy was supposed to be our knowledgeable badass, and he just stepped on a limb, and now he looks wrong. And then he's throwing darts at you behind your back, and you don't know it. And then when you leave, Suckpiece sucks, and this sucks, and Greg. And I don't like Greg. Why you don't like me? Because you sucked me into a debate, and you were wrong. You know what I mean? And so then I'm like, I'm not gonna step out front. I'm very cautious. I give them a way out, which means that if I really realize that he's respected and he's just going down the wrong road, I pull him aside and like, hey, we'll talk about this in a minute, you know. And then because I want to win the hearts and minds of my students all the time, and it's not their fault, you know what I mean. Occasionally you get that 5% guy that it's all about him, and it's usually that guy that really doesn't have any experience. The real operators that have respect, when you really share them the knowledge, then they absorb it and they move on, you know, as long as you don't freaking hurt their feelings or something. But I've had my feelings hurt. I remember freaking, well, it was long. I mean, this was like when I first started coming back working with real assaulters, and I was doing a movement technique. And one of the operators, because we always get a green suit that rotates in with us, and he's over us for 2 years, and they rotate in some of the courses that I run. And I had my support hand was all jacked up on the front of the rifle, right? Because I've shot as sports stuff as a kid, and I did a lot of pistol stuff with air marshals, and I was showing this movement. And in front of everybody, this operator, which I really respect, he's a badass, but there's no filter. In front of everybody, he goes, Greg, what the fuck are you doing with your hand? I'm like, what? What's this shit with your hand on the front of your gun? This is like 18 years ago. Now, really, it was last week. No, I'm just kidding. It was a long time ago. And I'm like, what? And he
probably
goes,
someone I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I just shrunk in spot because, you know, here's this guy, like, badass freaking dude. And I'm like, what? And he goes, why'd you hold your hand like that? That's freaking, don't ever hold your hand like that in front of me or anybody, especially, you know, then he pulled me, especially the students. And I felt like I was like 1 inch tall. You know what I mean? But I absorbed it. I learned from it. But then what's nice is I had decades of guys rotating with different personalities and different perspectives. But you know what I did? I absorbed everybody's perspective.
Yeah.
And then when another guy comes in that wants to lean a little bit this way, guess what I do? I lean that way. But because they're all right. It's all based on what environment you're training for and what perspective it is, you know?
Right. Hey, there was a guy, you remember a guy named Grinch, kind of really grumpy, kind of bald guy back in my day?
There was a bunch of different personalities.
Anyway, he used to do this. Like, you'd say something to him, you know, and he was like,
if you said his name, I probably knew.
He ended up being our squadron sergeant major. But anyway, he would go, you'd say something, right? And like, you know, he already knew the answer, or he's already done this, he's experienced. He'd be like, well, that's your opinion. You're probably wrong. And he'd like walk away. And that's all he would say. And it was just like, that's what I do with students. I'd be like, hey man, I disagree. That's your opinion. You're probably wrong. And I just walk away. And guys are like, What did you just say?
Yeah, and it leaves them kind of wondering. And sometimes you just don't have time for it. And you know, for me, a lot of my combative stuff, though, links to getting to your pistol or shooting. So it's anything that ventures into the actual firearm coming out. Like I just shut my pie hole. Like I know a lot of answers, but I'm not going to tell that operator entering that debate unless they ask me. And then if they ask me my opinion, I'll give them a bunch of different answers that I've seen and messed around with over the years and stuff like that. Like, hey, these are your possibilities that I've seen, but I'm in my lane. Like, I'm not going to argue with you on shooting, but don't venture into combatives and start debating, because if you want to debate about that, we'll talk for a while.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Let's wrap this up. Man, I'm here with Greg. We're talking to the man from Sock P. Thanks for tuning in. We covered a lot of ground, and we definitely will be doing this again in the future. Actually, I'd like to do an hour on just talking about vehicle stuff, right? Because vehicle stuff is so hot on the internet, and I'm not a vehicle tactics instructor, even though every time this fucking comes up with me, I'm like, okay, raise your hand if you've actually been in an ambush. So why the fuck won't you listen to me? Because the internet says something else, right? But we'll talk about that another day, man. So I'll give you the last word. What do you want to say to the guys? Hey,
if you listen this long, bless your heart for listening to me babble for so long. But thanks for listening. Whatever you guys need, if guys want to get me, go at SOCP. It's Greg at socp.info. If you want to email me, and then the Instagram, I think you put on there too.
Yep, SOCP _ solutions. Yep. Yeah. And then what's your gear website?
TX like Texas combatives.com. TXcombatives.com, and that's all just impact suits and training equipment for what we end up doing, awesome. Type stuff. Thanks, brother, for having me on.
Hey, man, always good.
Having a blast.
All right, thanks, man.
All right.